Chapter 1. The New Ruin. The ashes of World War II had barely settled when a new conflict began to smolder. The Cold War. The United States, fresh from victory, faced an impossible choice. To win this new, terrifying race, they needed weapons and mines unlike anything the world had ever seen. But the price of securing them would be a moral compromise that stained the very fabric of justice. This is the story of a secret project, a code word, and the disturbing truth behind why America gave immunity to war criminals. This is the first chapter in our series, The Cost of Victory. Victory has a price. Sometimes that price is paid in truth. By the spring of 1945, the Allied victory was absolute, but the unified front was crumbling. The world watched in horror as the true scale of the Holocaust was revealed at Nuremberg. Yet, even as justice was sought for the past, a new danger loomed in the East. The Soviet Union, the reluctant wartime ally, was rapidly transforming into the primary adversary. The spoils of war were no longer just territory. They were knowledge. The sudden, terrifying effectiveness of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima and Nagasaki drove home the chilling reality. Future wars would be fought not on the battlefield, but in the laboratory. This was a race not for land, but for technological dominance, a race the U.S. believed it could not afford to lose. What the Americans coveted most was the rocketry of the defeated Reich. Germany had already unleashed the V2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile, against London and Antwerp. This missile was a glimpse into the terrifying future of nuclear delivery. The U.S. understood that the V2's designers were the key to achieving Cold War dominance. Teams from the U.S. Army Ordnance and the British Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee BIOS flooded the German countryside. Their authorization was known as Operation Overcast, launched even before V-Day. Their objective: to seize the blueprints, the prototypes, and most critically, the minds behind the V2, specifically the charismatic and strategically shrewd Wernher von Braun and his 400-strong team, who had already planned their surrender to U.S. forces in the Bavarian Alps. Chapter 2. Operation Overcast and the Loopholes. Operation Overcast was a desperate scramble in the chaos of collapse. Intelligence teams used former German military channels and hastily formed alliances to identify and extract scientists. The goal was to stop them from falling into the hands of the advancing Red Army, which was known to be pursuing its own aggressive recruitment program. The strategic value of these men was catalogued. One team was assessed to be worth 10 divisions of infantry in the developing Cold War. The U.S. was essentially looting human capital. This initial process, however, exposed the immediate moral crisis. Many of the scientists were not simply civilian engineers. Their careers were intertwined with the darkest elements of the Nazi state. This included thousands of Nazi Party and NSDAP members and men holding ranks in organizations like the SS. In the summer of 1945, the situation forced official guidance. The Joint Chiefs of Staff issued the first directive. No active Nazis were to be recruited. This was reinforced in President Truman's own order, which stipulated that any German expert brought to the U.S. had to be vetted and deemed harmless to American interests. The problem was that the rocketry program's most vital personnel were inextricably linked to the Nazi regime. The solution, engineered by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency JIOA, was simple: disobey the spirit of the order while maintaining the letter. Documents were classified, information was withheld, and the vetting process became a rubber stamp for national security. Intelligence officers on the ground, faced with immense pressure, began to actively ignore the moral inventory in official U.S. intelligence dossiers. Scientists whose records flagged them as a security risk or ardent Nazi had their classifications deliberately downgraded. The argument was always the same. Their technical expertise outweighed their moral past. This bureaucratic act of deception was the true genesis of the program. Overcast evolved into Project Paperclip, a code word for the systematic laundering of Nazi pasts. Chapter 3: The Birth of Paperclip. By September 1946, Operation Paperclip was formally launched, replacing the ad hoc chaos with a bureaucratic machine dedicated to the transfer and integration of German personnel. The official number of recruits would eventually exceed 1,600. The sheer scale demanded a centralized, organized effort of concealment. The JIOA became the central clearinghouse for this project. Its primary function not intelligence gathering, but disinformation. The entire U.S. military command hierarchy, from the War Department down to the intelligence agents on the ground, was complicit in the intentional violation of Truman's stated policy. The truth was inconvenient, but the bureaucratic solution was swift, a wholesale alchemy of the past. The JIOA worked meticulously to erase any incriminating evidence. Dossiers containing membership numbers in the Nazi Party, involvement with the SS, or links to concentration camp labor were either purged or replaced. The term paperclip itself may derive from the physical act of using a paperclip to fasten the new, sanitized biographical summary over the original, damning wartime file. Former German soldiers and engineers were given new identities, new ranks, and new lives, ready for resettlement in facilities like Fort Bliss, Texas, and later Huntsville, Alabama. It was a trade of history for hardware transaction where the currency was justice. The Americans were not alone in this grim pursuit. In late 1946, the Soviets executed Operation Paperclip. Unlike the U.S. approach of selective recruitment, the Soviets launched a massive, forced deportation of German scientists and their families, an estimated 2,500 people from the Soviet occupation zone to Russia. This aggressive maneuver intensified the fear in Washington. The existence of Operation Paperclip served as the final, absolute justification for Paperclip, allowing U.S. intelligence to argue that their moral compromises were necessary to counter the Soviet menace, overriding any lingering ethical debate. The legacy of Paperclip remains a stark reminder that victory is rarely clean. It was a Faustian bargain, exchanging the dark truth for a bright future. But the story of the prize these scientists offered the V2 Rocketeers, a tale of its own. It's a story of ultimate technological terror, the ambition of its creator, and the hidden German site where it all began. A man who built bombs for Hitler was given a free pass to build a future for America. We must now turn our attention to the man at the center of this storm. We must ask, who was Wernher von Braun really? Next time on War Echoes, The Cost of Victory, we explore the terrifying technological journey in von Braun's secret, the shocking origin of the NASA scientist hired by Paperclip. Join us as we continue to uncover the hidden chapters of history.